I'm Courtney Fallon, and welcome to The Game Plan on Reach TV, your insider guide to this week's key NFL action. In The Game Plan, I tap into the Bleav podcast network to bring you the most important information you need to know to stay in the loop. And the dominoes have finally fallen. In a matter of 24 hours, a number of huge, and I mean huge names, made their moves and decided their futures. So to go over all of this big news, so much news that we needed to extend this segment, I am joined by my former NFL Network colleague, Lindsay Rhodes from the Fantasy Football Show on Bleav. Lindsay, are you ready to play 3 and Out with us here on The Game Plan?
I'm ready. Let's do this, especially if there's an extension added, like you mentioned.
Well, we got a lot to cover. All right, let's begin. First up, Kirk Cousins will be a Falcon next season after signing a 4-year, $180 million contract with $100 million that is guaranteed. You heard that number right. Is this the missing piece that pushes the Falcons into a playoff spot?
I think that this is going to be a missing piece. And now a missing piece to do what? Are they going to win a Super Bowl? I'm not totally sure. But in terms of the price that you alluded to there, I don't think that there is such a thing as over-investing in a quarterback, as long as that quarterback is a professional quarterback who can step in and run your offense, and you can get what you are looking for out of the rest of the pieces. This will open up the offense, open up the other pieces in the offense. It will make things easier for Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier to even run the ball. Kirk Cousins will change that. The division is wide open. I think it's a very smart investment for Atlanta.
I think so too, and I think that in terms of entertaining the crowds, he's already a fan favorite. I mean, who doesn't love Kirk Cousins? Saquon Barkley is heading south to Philly. Did Philly overpay for his services, or did they land the best back that's on the market? And was it personal between Saquon Barkley and the Giants, or just the right move for him?
Either way, I think it's a very good signing for Philadelphia. I think that running backs on the upper end of the pay scale are luxury signings, and it really makes sense to sign those guys if they are in a position to go compete right now. And certainly the Eagles look like they are that team. The Giants are not that team right now. So to allocate their resources on a running back, a non-premium position, I don't think is a smart building strategy for them. I think this is a smart move for the Giants to go with a lower end on the pay scale running back. I don't blame them for making this move. And I don't blame him certainly for going to Philadelphia. The options for a running back to maximize financial value at this time are really, really limited.
Fantastically put, well said. I agree with everything that you have there. Certainly, it's a luxury to have a top-paying, high-end running back, exactly as you mentioned too. Well, speaking of his former team, though, the Giants wasted no time making their own moves by trading for defensive end Brian Burns, which just blows my mind, Lindsay. Is this a fit for both parties?
Yeah, well, this is exactly actually what I was talking about for the Giants, right? This is what I want them to do in terms of building. This is a premium position, an edge rusher who can get to the quarterback and impact the game that way. This is where you need to be spending your money. So I think it's a really smart addition by the Giants. But I think that Carolina is in a rebuild. I think that their number one priority this year needs to be, and I think it is, to build an offense around Bryce Young. And so right now you're not going to get a 1-1 for Brian Burns because he is not in the financial position in terms of contract. You're going to have to pay him a lot of money. That said, it's not a good look for Carolina, but I understand why they did it, and I think that the reasoning behind their moves are smart.
Well, I think there's great promise in Dave Canales and what he's doing there with the Panthers. Next question. This is a big one, Lindsay. Russell Wilson has landed in Pittsburgh. Was this the best job for him? And do you think that this was a no-brainer for the Steelers and Mike Tomlin and all of the brass there in Pittsburgh that he signed a deal for $1.2 million?
I mean, certainly there's a lot of potential upside. It's worth the risk, I think, for Pittsburgh if it's $1.2 million. And I have yet to figure out what's going on with Russell, like why he looks so different in the last few years. I think Arthur Smith is going to need to somehow communicate to Russell Wilson in a way that lands, that he needs to do the things that the offense wants him to do, right? And they need to make sure that they're on the same page as far as what that looks like. That said, I don't think Kenny Pickett really had all that great of an opportunity in his first season. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's not somehow in the mix here too. I don't think that Russell just completely walks away with this job. Like, that's a slam dunk. But I think that they'll certainly start out with him, and I'm optimistic it could be better than it was in Denver.
Listen, every quarterback for themselves. In the dog days of summer, you got to compete for that number one spot. All right, Aaron Jones was released by the Packers. Lindsay, was this the right move for Green Bay, and do you think this will hurt the evolution of Jordan Love?
Well, there's no doubt that Jordan Love was at his best at the end of the year, and the Packers offense was at its best at the end of the year after week 15, when Aaron Jones coincidentally fully returned to health. So I do think that he was huge for the offense at the end of this season. But the problem, I think, with him was that he wasn't really on the field consistently prior to that. And I think that that's what they're getting out of by getting out of his deal. I don't think that Green Bay's offense will suffer. So I think it actually will end up being an okay move, honestly, for both of them. That's a third of his salary that he's getting more of in Minnesota than Green Bay. And I think most of us would probably not turn that down.
For sure. I have a bonus question for you. This has been a fantastic segment. So I'm just thinking, and I'm going along with Tyreek Hill, talking about the Dolphins and their sneaky good free agency. Do you think that the Dolphins and Chris Greer, he's got it cooking for Miami? What are your thoughts?
Just sneaking a Miami question in there. But yeah, I have faith that the pieces, that the powers that be there in Miami are going to put the right pieces on the field there. I'm really eager to see what Mike McDaniels does with this offense this season. Devon Achane, by the way, and that's one of the biggest things that I'm most interested in, is what that guy is going to look like this year, because the inconsistency with which he was on the field was the only thing holding him back from being in the best running back in the NFL conversation. And so I'm really excited to see Devon Achane, what he does specifically this season.
Lindsay Rhodes, thank you so much for joining us. We hope to have you on again soon.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Caleb Williams is the consensus number one pick in the draft. He proved his worth with a Heisman Trophy sophomore season. Now, to break down what type of player that the team that drafts him will get, let's hear from Phil Simms and Matt Simms from the Simms Complete podcast. Guys, what do you got for me?
Thank you, Courtney. Here we are, Simms Complete family, Matt Simms, Phil Simms, and we're going to talk a little bit right now about Caleb Williams. Big Phil, what are your thoughts on Caleb Williams and his passing of the medicals and how he handled the combine this year?
Well, let me answer this way real quick too. The Caleb Williams, been the number one pick for a long time.
Right.
Talked about. All I know is he's got the NFL size, he's got the NFL mobility. He doesn't have NFL arm. He's got an NFL arm plus. I mean, he's got everything you want. And so him passing up the physicals, I don't blame him. He's the one dictating a lot of this stuff. You know, if they grab you enough, Matt, sooner or later somebody's going to find a little something wrong with you, and then it becomes a big story.
They really don't like the Caleb Williams personality, you know?
Yeah.
It comes across a certain way. For you as an evaluator, if you're a general manager, does that bother you?
Well, if I got to meet him and it really, really bothered me, knowing this is going to be trouble for our football team, then yeah, I'm going to put that into the equation.
Right.
But I just know everybody I talked to that was down there watching the quarterbacks, they had nothing but good things to say about Caleb Williams. All I know is I'll be surprised if he's not successful.
And if you're the Bears,
Early.
you're drafting Caleb Williams, right?
Absolutely. Come on. It's if you could hand a card in right now, they should do it. But he's got the personality that he can really galvanize people and teams and his teammates to do well. So,
and he's got the playmaking ability to galvanize a whole city and team too, and win multiple games, right? Because of his talent, right? And that's really what matters the most. So, that's all we got, Courtney. Long story short, we don't give a damn about that stuff that people keep talking about Caleb Williams. We think that he is a really good football player, and we're excited to see what he does in Chicago as their quarterback one. That's all we got, Courtney. We'll see you soon.
Well, Phil Simms said it best. His talent is undeniable. And I agree. That's what matters here most. He is a certified day one starter in the NFL. Sticking with quarterbacks, we're moving on to Oregon's Bo Nix, who has been moving up the draft boards. To break down exactly what fans can expect from the senior play caller, let's hear from Jonathan Stewart and Zachary Neal from the Sco-ing Long podcast. Guys, you report on the Ducks. What can you tell us about Bo Nix?
Jay Stu, it feels like Bo Nix is one of the most polarizing QBs in this draft class. I mean, I was just at his pro day at Oregon earlier today in Eugene, and he was great. He made all the throws. He made short throws, long throws, intermediate throws. He had zip on the ball. He was accurate. He was on the move. He was dodging people that were coming at him. And when you look at reviews from actual NFL analysts and people who we largely trust in this industry, they rave about him and they rave about his abilities. Then you go on social media and he gets nothing but hate from a large portion of the audience. People saying that he checks down too much. He doesn't throw the deep ball. He's not accurate. He gets a lot of hate because of his age. There's not much faith in his abilities. Why do you think that is?
People are straight up haters. That's why. They're mad that he's in a situation that not many people have been. You know, he's an older player, but that means he knows ball. He knows how to play quarterback. He knows how to play the position. He's played it and gotten reps. Count college as reps. That's how I see it. Social media is, take it with a grain of salt at the end of the day, right? So my view on Bo Nix is he has the it factor. And when I say the it factor, he has the ability to extend plays. He has the ability to make things happen when a defense shows that there's nothing there. He understands when to roll out of the pocket, and he has the athleticism to throw across his body to make accurate, miraculous throws and catchable balls, right? And so it's one thing to be able to throw the ball however you want to throw it, but catchable, being in, the accuracy department, which he showcased today. And so I think he has all the tools. And I mean, his deep ball, I look at the UW game, he was able to launch that ball on the run. It was like a 50-yard ball on the run. So if you're questioning his arm strength, get out of here.
Thanks, guys. Yes, I agree. His age could be a positive, meaning whoever drafts him is getting a very mature college-level player that translates well to the pros. And not only that, but he's incredibly talented. He has great short area movement, very explosive in the open field. Let's see where he ends up. Well, the pro level has seen a number of big-name running backs changing teams this offseason, but for the team that's looking to draft a running back, one of the first names up on their draft board will be Jalen Wright. To dive deeper into what type of talent Wright is, let's hear from Jay Graham and Aaron Hayden from the Bleav in Tennessee podcast. Guys, what can you tell me about Mr. Wright?
Thanks, Courtney. We recently had Jalen Wright on the show, Tennessee tailback, to talk about why he's the number one back and why we think he should be the number one running back drafted in this coming NFL draft. We talked about his speed. We talked about how explosive he was. He has over 1,000-yard rushing this season and also 7.4 yards to carry. So we talked about all these different things he brought to the table, and he showed it in the combine. 38-inch vertical, 11.2 broad jump, which was the top in history for running backs, and also ran a 4.38, and he slipped out on the first step AA. What's your thoughts on it?
My thoughts are he's a kid that's had over 4 runs that were 60 yards in the SEC versus Georgia, versus Alabama, versus the best in the country. And then he goes to the combine with a chip on his shoulder, and he says, I come out early, nobody's talking about me, and I'm going to go up there and everybody's going to be talking about me when I leave the combine. And so I just love the maturity of the kid. He did it on the field, and then he went to the combine prepared and did it there at the combine. So, in my opinion, he's definitely earned RB1.
You look at everything he's done, just like you said, AA. We two former running backs went to the combine. We talked about all those things, and this young man just showed up and just blew everyone away. And when you interview him like we did and saw his level of maturity and desire, sky's the limit for this young man. So we are excited, looking forward to watching the draft. This is the number one running back in the draft, and these teams better come out there and pick him. If you need a running back, Jalen Wright's your guy. So it's back to you, Courtney.
Good point. This is a SEC battle-tested running back, and he's moving up the draft boards as he garners more attention. In a draft that is deep in quarterbacks and wide receivers, the linebackers have been overlooked, in my opinion. So to take a look at the best linebackers in this 2024 draft, let's hear from Joe DeLeone from the First Team podcast on Bleav.
Thanks, Courtney. This week on the First Team, my co-host Ryan Roberts and I dropped our top 10 linebackers in the 2024 NFL Draft. And it's worth noting that this year's linebacker class seriously lacks the general talent that we're used to seeing coming into the NFL. It doesn't have a premier player that's good enough to go in the first round, nor does it have really any quality depth of guys that are going to turn out to be NFL starters for the long term. What it does have is two very high quality players that will go somewhere on day 2. The first being Junior Colson from Michigan, who was a key important part for Michigan winning a national title this year. We knew that the defense was the pulse of their success, and the guy in the center of all that was Junior Colson. He is a big, hulking linebacker presence that is going to play in the middle at the Mike backer position, that can run sideline to sideline. He can fill gaps downhill very aggressively, and specifically in the Rose Bowl, we remember the impact that he had in disrupting Jalen Milroe. That level of impact is going to show up in the NFL, and this is a guy who could be brought up and should be brought up, depending on how productive he is, as a Defensive Rookie of the Year candidate, because he could rack up 1 million tackles. Now, the other guy that is far more risky that I would willingly take on day 2, but the NFL might be worried about his injury history, that being Peyton Wilson from NC State. Now, he ran a ridiculous time at the NFL Combine for his 40-yard dash for a 6'4" linebacker. He can cover any spot on the field. He's great in pass coverage. He is also somebody with the athletic traits to close down any gap, and more importantly, the instincts of a player who could eventually become an all-pro linebacker in the NFL. If he stays healthy and he has a long career, he could go on to be one of the best linebackers in the NFL, but there's a big if because of the injuries that he has sustained in his time playing for NC State. That's it for me. Back to you, Courtney.
Okay, so according to Joe, watch out for Junior Colson and Peyton Wilson and where they go in the draft. If you haven't seen Joe DeLeone's breakdowns on the First Team podcast, go check it out. He is so incredibly knowledgeable. Okay, it is that time of the day to play Pick Six on the game plan, and this week we will be discussing the top 6 linebackers in the NFL with a friend of the show, Lofa Tatupu from the Take 12 podcast. Lofa, welcome back. Are you ready to play Pick Six?
I am ready. I loved getting Pick Sixes, so I'm excited about this list.
Listen, it just goes with the brands. You know, you're repping the Seahawks. We got a couple of Seahawks here that we want to discuss. But staying in the division, let's start with number 1 on your list is Fred Warner for the 49ers. He actually just did a little restructuring of his deal to free up some cap space.
He just has some things you can't teach, and part of it's perspective and how he attacks the game and the angles he takes, but then the natural ability to run anybody down, run with receivers 40 yards downfield, put pressure on the quarterback. He does everything. He stacks up every stat in every category. So that's why he is number 1 for me.
Number 2 on your list, and listen, I'm not a linguistic expert, but I will say Bobby Okereke is number 2 on your list, and he plays for the Giants, formerly of the Indianapolis Colts. Why is he on your list as a number 2 best linebacker in the NFL?
Yeah, he was amazing with Indianapolis, who drafted him, and I really couldn't believe they let him out of there. He got a big payday to go to the Giants, and he became the unquestioned leader, and he racked up stats in every category, much like Fred. Tackles, sacks, interceptions, forced fumbles. I think he had 4 of those on the year. So that's why he is at my number 2.
Well, number 3 is Dre Greenlaw. Unfortunate situation in the Super Bowl, popping his Achilles on just kind of a freak play. So hopefully he can possibly get back to the league and back with the Niners at some point during the 2024 season. But what a talent he is.
Dre Greenlaw was my favorite linebacker of that draft. And again, things that you can't teach, the way he tracks the ball carrier and arrives in a bad mood. And I guarantee you heard it in Fred Warner's post-game interview in the Super Bowl. Him and Fred are the heart and soul of that defense. So that was a tough blow to take. But he'll be back, and just expect great things at him. He does it all.
Number 4 on your list is Demario Davis. He's been in the league for a long time, 35 years old with the Saints. Why does he still make your top 5?
It's crazy. He was consistent performer every year when he was with the Jets, went to Cleveland for a year, came back to the Jets. He goes down to New Orleans and just makes 5 All-Pros. He gets after the passer, he's stout in the run, and then not asked to do it a lot, but he can cover tight ends and receivers too. And so always enjoyed watching him play. And he just signed another 2 or 3 year deal at the age of 35. It's incredible.
Absolutely. Number 5 on your list here is Bobby Wagner. He plays for the Seahawks. You used to play for the Seahawks. There are some rumors here that Bobby Wagner and the Seahawks might be expected to part ways. Your number 5 linebacker on this list. Will he stay in Seattle?
With all the moves we've made, moving on from several veterans, it looks like a total revamp up here. But yeah, at number 5, Bobby Wagner, another vet. This will be his 13th year. Leads the league in tackles. And, you know, a lot of people, like, they've had him further down on the list, but to lead the league in tackles and put up the numbers he does, he's one of the best blitzing linebackers I've ever seen in my life. He is the greatest Seahawk linebacker we will ever see. And he's number 5.
Well, number 6 on your list is a group of honorable mentions, but we have to limit them to 1. So which one is your favorite linebacker on this honorable mentions list and why?
It's so hard, but I got to go with Lavonte David. I felt bad even leaving him out of the top 5. Since 2012, just like Bobby Wagner, they put up monster tackling numbers. Same exact 33 sacks each, 12 interceptions plus each. Anytime a linebacker creates that much more value for his team, it's unbelievable. So I'm sorry, Lavonte, I couldn't put you in the top 5, but you got a special place in my heart, man.
So that's what we love here on the Game Plan. Lofa Tatupu, thank you so much for joining us. We'll hope to see you on again soon.
Thanks for having me, Court.
That's all the time we have today on the Game Plan. Go check out the Bleav Podcast Network for more in-depth analysis on every team in the league. And we'll see you next week as we continue to prepare for the NFL Draft.